Welcome to the Perennial Pride podcast with Tom Savantry. Here you'll learn new strategies and approaches outside the typical financial advice to help you gain more control and freedom with your wealth so you can maximize the impact for your families, future generations to come, and the community at large. Every episode is designed to help empower you to determine the best course of action on your path to financial freedom. So today I'm really super excited to have a good friend of mine, known him for a number of years, John Fortes. He's the founder of the Avant Investment Fund. And I know there's going to be some rebranding going on, so maybe we'll talk about that. Excited to hear kind of direction you're going. And he's the host of the Passive Investor Show, which if you haven't been on there, you definitely need to go there and learn different ways to maximize your income and generate passive income. And so, John, really happy to have you on here. Looking forward to this conversation. So how are you doing today?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the Perennial Pride. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, man. So I'm an open book. What do you got?
That's great. No, and that's why and we were joking before we started recording here that John and I, we can talk, we talk about investments and wealth building, but we have so many common connections around our families and interests, and we can talk for eons. So, this might be longer than some of my other podcasts, but it will be fun nonetheless. And I know John will provide some tremendous nuggets and things for you to think about. So, John, why don't you, to kick things off, why don't you sort of tell our listeners a little bit about your background? I know you come from a technology space, and how'd you get into real estate, right? From that. So can you share a little bit about that journey for my listeners?
Sure. Happy to. Before we do that, though, please, everybody, to support Tom, please like and subscribe. I mean, it means a lot, and it goes extremely far in being able to produce more content. So what you're doing is extremely amazing for the community and the culture and everyone out there seeking how to generate wealth. And yeah, outside of
Great to
that,
have.
one thing I like to mention though is this is legit peek into our conversations of whenever we are on the. So I hope everybody enjoys it because we don't get bored of it because we can go on forever. But how I got started is while ago I just realized my 401k wasn't doing what I was planning to achieve when in retirement. So I projected everything out and I said, I'm not gonna make it. I don't want to do a door job in my older age just to make ends meet with inflation and everything. And one of my biggest taglines is I'm trying to beat inflation 1% at a time. So I came to discover that through my journey. So I focused on real estate and I realized that I understood real estate easier than I did the stock market or 401ks and anything you want to associate with wealth. So at that time, I was a poor I was a great spender, poor saver. I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? So I had to really go back to the basics and create some discipline within myself, my family, and how we do things. So it started with me. So I did a lot of reading, and my wife always says, if he wants something, he's gonna go get it. He's gonna look into it, and he's gonna research the hell out of it. She hates being around if I have to do anything with negotiating. She gets uncomfortable because I have to ask the questions I need to be comfortable with before making the big purchase or acquisition, or even as little as ATV. Because I don't know, I want to make sure you're not hiding a better model that I know about from your website, something like that, that you're probably saving for another customer or something. So, or yourself. So I just do a lot of research and go in. So anytime I have to go purchase something on the closing day or whatever, she will purposely not show up because I do a lot of, I like to inquire about a lot. I'm not haggling for the last dollar. I'm just trying to get the best situation for me and my family. But with that said, just to get back on track, I started with just a single family home. We invested in that. It's been producing well and very, very awesome. And to the point where we refinanced when the rates were low and, everything that everybody else does. So with that said, I started learning about multifamily investing, and I'm not talking about like 2, 3 families. I went to 50, 100, 200, 500 units. I wanted to know, how do people invest in those type of assets? lo and behold, you get what you search for, right? So I started joining communities. I invested in myself. I got some education. I went to, still do go to conferences, and I just continually to network and learn about the business to the point where today, where I am today, is me and my team. We have a fund, and you mentioned a little bit of the rebranding. We're going from the Fortes company to Supreme Equity dot Fund. If you type that into a browser, yes, that is a real website, a real domain. So Supreme Equity dot Fund, and we purposely did that because our model went from purchasing one-to-one investment properties on the multifamily level, 100 units or more, to purchasing it through a fund. So we structured a fund together where our investors can invest in the fund, and we go ahead and we purchase multifamily assets. And my bread and butter is strictly multifamily. I have a lot of friends in the business that do self storage or mobile home parks and other things like that, and commercial triple net leases, those type of assets that do structure those type of contracts with the vendors in place. So I haven't expanded that far out, though I have the network to be able to do so easily. But because I focus so much on multifamily, it's my bread and butter. I understand the markets. I understand how it weathers economic downturns efficiently rather than people getting scared and thinking, oh, commercial assets don't recover well in the downturn when in all reality, and we'll talk about COVID too, the effects of COVID if you want, with how it affected everything. In '08, everybody was freaked out about single family homes. And that was because of the ninja loans and
Right.
anybody can walk into the bank and get a loan and just go and purchase any type of asset. Things are a little bit tightened up now where it's harder for that. So if any type of market crash happens, it's not because of people who can't be not being able to afford their loans on that type of because they're properly vetted. So a lot of people try to associate that in the '08 market when we did experience economic downturn, multifamily, commercial multifamily, anybody that invested in those type of syndications, I would say, has weathered those type of economic downturns to the point where I think only 3% defaulted on those at that time. So that just gives you a number to throw at the wall against when you want to think about the residential market and how many defaults there versus the commercial investor space. So a lot of wealthy people did not suffer during that time.
Yeah. No, and and that's the beauty of it. I mean, you kind of alluded to it in a whole front set. Real estate in general, there's so many different ways to be successful in it, and different types of asset classes. And from and you hit on when you started with single family, and that's how I started personally as well. And it was a good learning ground. And you and I are alike because we like to research things, we're very curious. And so it for folks who are listening, sometimes maybe we call it alternative assets or alternative investing, which maybe has a scary tone to it, but just requires a little education. But like, how did, when you first started even getting into it, before even getting into the multifamily, like how difficult, what were some of the kind of key things you did to even just get started? Because it can be potentially a scary world because you're entering into something that is unknown. What are things you did, things you specifically read or researched that really helped you kind of continue to move forward and actually do something?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before I did anything, I spent the year researching and reading a lot of books, and it's not just all real estate. I read a lot of business books, self-development books. I read about 66 books in that 1 year. A lot of through audiobook. Had a long drive at that time with my W-2 where I was dedicating at least almost 4 hours of audiobook time a day. Almost a 2-hour commute pending the day, pending the traffic. So that really helped. And the tool that I used at the time was I made my first investment through my 401k. And actually I did it through before the 401k, I did it with a home equity line of credit. So we did a
Mhm.
home equity line of credit that we invested it into an asset, our first single family home. And then I used my 401k to invest in a multifamily asset. And then after that, I started learning about the wealth management tools that you provide with the whole life insurance policies. And, we were connected back then and we started talking, and it took me, I don't know, it took us a few calls, but I believe a good couple months before we hammered something out and we got on. I don't know. I probably had like 5 meetings alone just with you showing the waterfall and the structure and how it looks like and everything. I wanted to completely understand it. And going forward is what came out of that is we developed a nice package for us for me and generally to a lot of that was when I recoup that that second investment of my 401k back, how could I make sure we had enough room to be able to buffer and put it in and grow from there? That was the main plan and thought process on that. So right now, the uses of it is I have friends that I've consulted with that have a whole life insurance policy, and they love it. And the way they explain it to me is they used it to purchase they were going into retirement and they used it to purchase their wife's last car. And now they know what they can pay back to their plan to pay it off. So it allows you to basically borrow against yourself and pay it back. And you're just, if you keep up with the interest payments, you take your time paying it back, or if you want to just hammer it out and pay it aggressively, if you're just that determined, but understand that once you pay it off, you could borrow back against it. It's almost like if you understand home equity line of credit, you'll understand, the simple.
Exactly. You're right. Exactly. Sort of that way, just as just a little bit more control, and values won't drop. There is guaranteed that. So yeah, if you understand home equity lines, it's a perfect sort of comparison of how to use financing, but it does require people to be disciplined with it, as I know you are.
Yeah.
So really,
Absolutely. Right now it's a blend of both right now that we're doing with investments. And we're actually looking, it's kind of might take me for crazy, but I'll buy in any market because I understand if I buy in a high interest market and I'm buying for cash flow, if I structure it right and say I'm getting 8 to 10% cash flow on the assets I'm personally buying for my personal portfolio or for my investors, I know that I can also go back in and refinance at a later date when the rates drop and give me favorable returns going forward. So that's kind of like my brashness. I mean, I'm not scared of the markets. I do practice the buy right philosophy where I'm very careful on how I underwrite what I'm going to purchase next. So right now we're looking for like a 3 to 5 family right now with the market right now. I live in Massachusetts, so I invest a lot out of state. I bet my personal portfolio, with the exception of my residence, is out of state. I don't own one investment property in Massachusetts. Will that change? I don't know. We'll see. But it also allows me to go ahead, and me and my wife has started a couple businesses. I've started a basketball business. People know me as a basketball referee locally, and I just really love being on the basketball court. My son plays. My daughter's taking the soccer. My wife just started her business. So we use it to grow our businesses too, and we know that we have to pay it back. So instead of paying it back and having a lot of pressure on us in that aspect, we're very comfortable with where we are with how, if once our businesses take off on certain aspects, how much we have to pay, when we have to pay, how we have to pay. So, it's very, very intriguing for anybody that's inquiring about something like that. But also it's a tool. It's a tool to get us to the next level. And our next level is being accredited investor. And then there's another step upside from that when you're at $5 million net worth, I believe it's called something else invest. I can't remember at this moment, but there's different levels to this, and I'm just trying to play Monopoly like everybody else.
that's right. And in my one of the prior podcasts, and you kind of said it perfectly. That the trio in my head is a method to save money, protect family, and then invest in things that are going to bring you cash flow. One of the three is personal development. The other one is businesses. The other one is real estate. Now, that's not the only thing, but you just went through all three of them within the use of that with your own funds, and it just so happens to also protect your family. So that's just really amazing sort of use of those dollars. You get to use dollars in two different spots, right? To protect and save and invest. So it's really an awesome story. But can I take back to, you said something earlier as it relates to 401k and using it to invest in real estate. Now, for some listeners, maybe that doesn't even seem realistic. Like, how do you do that? So can you walk the listeners through like how you did that?
Yeah, at that time that I made that investment, I closed out my 401k account, and a lot of people probably gonna think I'm crazy, but I essentially just replaced it with the whole life insurance policy. I did a swap. I didn't know I was gonna do that when I started it, though. I thought my investment with the single family home was gonna be my insurance policy, and I've already doubled that investment. Might have even tripled it right now with this market. If I'm thinking right, in the last since 2018. So it's been 5 years. And had it just sat there, I'll just throw this number out. Let's just say it was 100,000 and that was in there. It's right now up, up to 300,000. That's what it's worth. Now, let's just project that out with a regular 401k account. I wouldn't be nowhere near 300,000 right now.
Hmm.
Even just contributing aggressively, I just don't think it would be there. I'm not even trying to project it out, but I did at the time, and I just didn't like where I was. So with that said, maybe I should have broken up into a couple of different assets if it's at 100,000, right? And buy two $50,000 assets. You can always refinance
Right.
tax free, and then if I gotta pay back my loan, I pay back my loan on wholesale development. I mean, the whole life insurance policy. But back then, like I said, I did it without that contingency. And then when me and you had our discussion, I started thinking this is going to replace my 401k. How do I do this? How do I, one, do I need it? And I said yes. Two, it has a lot of benefits too with the beneficiary benefactors where I could leave it to my family with a death benefit attached to it. Three, I can borrow against it anytime. Four, I like to put my savings in an account where I can't see. I can't see unless I log in. I'm not logging in that every day.
Right.
It's just something I don't need to see. But I know when I get an excess amount of capital, I'll go and I'll say, hey, if I have a pending loan, I'll distribute back. If I have any paid up additions, which anybody can talk to Tom, if they need the clarification on any of those, Tom can break it down. So basically, I have a base pay. I'll just make it quick for you and how easy I understand it. I have a base pay. Say my base pay is $1,000 a year. I can add up to $4,000 every year paid up additions. So if I have any, if I paid my base pay and I'm looking to contribute more, and say I got, I don't know, maybe I hit a scratch ticket on $1,000, and I don't even play scratch tickets, but I found one on the ground saying where miracle money came from. If I got that, I could put it towards my paid up additions till I reach that cap for the year. And then it's basically I'm saving. I'm saving more to be able to borrow and be able to go and purchase more cash flow and assets. So that's my goal with it. I wanted to say this earlier, but I didn't. I don't like credit cards because the interest rate is 20% or more. It's just insane. So not to say I don't use it, but I minimize my use as much as possible just to keep the cycle of credit going. Anything I have, I could pay off tomorrow, basically.
Yeah.
That's my balance. That's my philosophy. I just hate paying interest for that high, but if it's, we're doing a house renovation and sometimes I say, hey, can we get the points on something? And then we can pay it off and blah, blah, blah. And try to make money in multiple ways, even though I probably ain't using the point system correctly. But if I know I have a big purchase, I have the credit card there where I can go and do it as long as I know
It,
I
it,
can pay.
it's funny you mentioned that because I do use credit cards strategically, but mainly to get points and pay for travel, things of that nature, and use their money and just pay it off every month. But what you were describing around utilizing your a savings tool like a life insurance policy, used designed properly, and we'll have separate episodes to go through this deeper. So, but it almost is like a credit card with these bonus rewards. The life insurance is like a savings account, like a savings or checking account that has bonus rewards. And the bonus rewards are things like protecting your family if something died, if you get disabled, right? Protections of taxes. So those are just some of the things. So it's a similar way. Instead of using a plain old banking account, you get these bonus rewards for using their bank account. And so we'll go way more into that. But it's funny you mentioned it because I shared that with someone more recently and said, "Oh wow, that makes a heck of a lot of sense, right? Why not use their money and I get all these extra benefits on it?" And so it's just strategically using leverage in smart ways. And I know you do that for your multifamily apartment complex as well, right? You have to use debt sometimes and investor money, right? So this is where our worlds collide because I'm able to invest money that I'm saving that's tax advantaged and does a whole host of other things, but then leverage someone else's money to invest to basically use those dollars in two different spots, like in a cash flowing asset like real estate. So I know I've invested with you in your fund and will continue to do so. So, for people who are maybe still experimenting and learning about this space, can you help kind of my listeners walk through what like investing in something that you offer looks like and what is it? Because these are busy people, they're crazy lives with families, jobs, or whatever, and it's sometimes difficult to maybe learn everything about it. But like, how does your offering and help people like that who are really maybe pressed for time?
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that a few things. When they first invest in a private PPM, so it's a private, I can't think of it right now. It's escaping.
Placement.
Yes, private placement memorandum. Thank you. I'm sorry. So when people first invest in something like that, it, even when they're educated and and read from themselves up, it's two things that are very daunting for them. It's reading the PPM, reading all of the things that can go bad and blow up if the deal goes bad. And then once they get over that hurdle, they sign the subscription. And the next big hurdle is actual wiring of the commitment. So I'll use an example, $100,000 commitment. All right, John, I'm going to invest $100,000 in this fund that is only designed to go and invest in multifamily assets. And what we do is we find the assets, and I'll just give you overhead of what our bread and butter is we identify multifamily assets that have been mismanaged or need some capex or both. That's the golden nugget right there. That's the golden goose. But if it's mismanaged, we can go ahead and implement our systems and operate it efficiently, run it efficiently for less, basically. And we don't scale back anything in the manner of cheaping out on certain things. We just know what our prices are, what they're paying, and we buffer the difference. With that said, is we'll go ahead and we'll purchase it for the X dollar amount. We're using our investor capital. Our cash flow, we're purchasing off cash flow anyways. So our cash flow is going to cover our investors' return. So our investors guaranteed 8% return in our fund. So if you're investing 100,000, guaranteed, not guaranteed, pretty much guaranteed on the 8% preferred return, $8,000 a year on your investment. And you're part of the upside on the sale. So when we sell, we catch you up to the 8,000 per year. If we hold it for 3 years, 8 times 3, boom, boom, boom. And then any upside additional is 70% to the investors, to their prorated capital investment in that inside the fund, and then the 30% is prorated to the general partners who is running the deal. So as a limited investor, all they are doing is bringing the capital and the trust to the partnership. We're bringing the opportunity, the trust, and we're operating and providing the details in a monthly newsletter and the returns on a quarterly basis. Now, once our fund is completely closed and capped, meaning we're no longer raising on that fund because we're moving to fund two or fund three or fund four, now we're in a position where we can go ahead and distribute on a monthly basis. So as a new investor, there's huge obstacles. I get it. But I noticed on when we have repeat investors, if their first investment was, let's say, the $50,000 minimum required investment, their next investment is not 50,000. It's 100, 150, 200. To the point where I'm inundated with, hey, can I 1031 into your fund? It's just crazy. And when you're accepting 1031s or someone's willing to 1031, that's a big dollar amount. And that's because they sold another piece of real estate and they don't want to get the tax hit at that time. And they just want to put it in something
Into yours. Yeah, yeah.
more cash flowing, or they got to look for the asset on their own. So that's a whole different ball game. It's just kicking the tax can down the road. And, collecting, I don't know, 800,000 with a return on 800,000 for cash flow on a monthly or quarterly basis doesn't sound bad when you're shielding taxes. So, you know, I hope I explained it right.
Yeah.
You invest in our fund, we go purchase multifamily, we control it, we manage it, we do everything. All you have to do is just sit back and watch. And you can question and ask questions anytime. We're happy to share anything. We share financial details as well of the assets we're investing. And we give you an update on what we've improved, even things that might be struggling. We'll give you some things that are challenging us, like the market with COVID. We did a lot of community things at that time before we sold our last asset coming out of COVID. We did a lot of things where we offered food trucks. We brought outside movies with social distancing in place, and we just made sure the community stayed a community there, all while renovating and turning over things. It's not just, we talk about this all the time, Tom. We're not just looking for an asset just to go and raise the rents and kick people out that can't live there. And we're looking for opportunities where we know we can go ahead and improve something that was once maybe looked at as, broken or something. And another thing, we're not buying D-class assets. If anybody understands real estate, there's which is really good properties, B right below A, C is okay, D is completely bad. We look for C plus to B, and we dabble in A's every now and then too.
No, that's really helpful. And so a couple things that sort of popped in my mind as you were explaining that, John, was one, and I know this of you, and you kind of touched on it, that what you're doing, obviously you're trying to build wealth, to support your family, give them the best life that you want, give yourself and your wife the best life that you can have. But you do care about serving and the community. And that's really part of it. So part of me says, there's always a sting around people getting wealthy. It's the greedy mantra. And I don't believe it should be that way. I think it's good to build wealth because it pushes people to, do more, learn more, like you did on your own, to figure this out and contribute more to society. And if you can get wealthy with it, that's great, because you're going to give back too. You can do other great things with it. And so I look at that. I'm trying to change that dialogue from whoever I can around that topic. It's good to be wealthy because you could do more. You can have more freedom in life and make a larger impact, which is what we're all here for. So I really applaud you for always thinking that way very abundantly. And it's why we obviously get along and share that same value. And On that same note, you mentioned obviously, your investment can give you income and maybe some growth on the end, but it's also tax benefits. That's one of the things around real estate. It can be very tax advantaged because the government wants us to do these things. They want people to be able to, like you're doing, house and provide housing, great housing for hundreds of people in one building. What a tremendous service that is. And do it in a good way, not a bad landlord and, treating people poorly. You're doing it in the right way. And that's really cool. And you can get some tax breaks. So for people who are investing in, say, maybe your fund, I know you're not a CPA and this is not tax advice, but there are tax implications to this, right? Positively. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for adding the disclaimer. Talk to your CPA, your accountant, tax, whoever. But one of the things our fund generates is a K1 for our investors, and those allow us to. So basically, when we purchase an asset, we go and cost segregate. We cost segregate the asset, which is depreciate and accelerate the tax benefits. So what that does is, in turn, is it comes back down to the investor. We don't keep it all. I know that there's some sponsors that keep it all for themselves, and their investors only get a percentage, and it's a high percentage, which is the trade off on certain things. But we share it with our investors. So anything we purchase and cost segregate, we share it back down to the investors. So I'm gonna try my best at this, right? So don't take this for gospel. So let's just say you earned $8,000 in your $100,000 investment, $8,000 that year. And your cost segregation portion of that on your K1 shows I'm going to say like, I'll make it just an easy number, 24. And just because you made 8,000 that year in cash flow, it mitigates and wipes that out. So you're not paying taxes on that. So what happens to the remaining capital that's left, right? 16. Allocate it towards the year 2, and it carries forward and allocate to year 3. So that's how it's mitigated and shielded. I think I did my best on explaining that. It's just
Yeah.
how my simple mind works, and I'm real.
Yeah. Listen, this is, people will, they always use Trump, right? Trump's usually the best example. He can be brash and arrogant how he states things, but you go back to, he thinks he's smart because he doesn't pay taxes, right? But he's following the rules around the IRS code around how we treat these sorts of things, and it just so happens because you're doing something that a lot of people won't do, is to buy an apartment complex and fix it up and manage it and housing, like I said, hundreds of people, potentially a really great service. You get a tax break. And so in this situation, you can write those costs off, and it's not an actual cash flow. So all that 8,000, like you said, on paper, looks like you don't have to pay any taxes on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You get that, keep it. So it is going into, and it's more things we'll be chatting about, because real estate has a very powerful aspect to it if you understand how that works and over long term. And there's obviously a lot of tax strategies around ways to never have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
So, right. So that's another advantage, but obviously it's the benefits to it on top of, the things you just mentioned. So it really adds, and that's why I think it's always such a wonderful compliment to what you started before, is where I'm saving my dollars in whole life insurance has also tax benefits to it. So you're kind of combining the two into a love affair of tax savings and shielding of our wealth. And I don't say that to be un-American. I love this country and I pay my fair share, however you deem that to be. But the more I get to keep for myself, my family, and others, the more I get to dictate how to use it and use it for good and however I want to use it. So I want to get that across, because I think people can throw around this tax saving concept as, back to greed. I use it because I want to keep more to be able to use productively for good. And that to me is much more powerful and freeing as an individual. So sorry for that little rant, but it just sometimes
I
gets
like
me when I hear it. Yeah, it's just about being positive around it. I mean, if someone asks you if you think our government spends our dollars wisely, there's not going to be one that's going to feel very confident in that answer. Yes. So I feel like I can spend it better. So let me do it and help others where I can.
I mean,
Yep.
it's not like we don't donate. We donate to things that we care about.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
invest in things that our kids care about. We support that. And I mentioned something earlier where, you know, I play Monopoly. And when you understand the rules of Monopoly, you are a better player. So my goal is to be a better player, but also not for, yes, it creates wealth. It generates this, it generates that. It, the more I can generate, the more I can help. But it's just my philosophy. I help as much as I can now. And I know that when I bring in more in the future, my goal is to keep helping or starting causes. Or if my son and my daughter came to me in the future and said, I want to be able to do this, go and serve the community in this way, I want to be able to have one, the connections, two, if we don't have the connections, could we start it and let him or her run it in their way and provide them as much resources? Because we all know when you start something, people attract to it. More people want to help, be included, be involved.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's just how I look at it. And
Yeah,
we've managed to do it through many tools, through real estate. And one of the biggest ones we hit on today was home equity line of credits, 401ks, and whole life insurance policies.
absolutely. And for anyone who's maybe the first time even thought about these sorts of investments that maybe seemingly scary. And that's why to John, to your point earlier, as you're getting to real estate is to get educated and to meet people and be open-minded and asking the right questions to get more confidence because that's really going to be key. And I would encourage everyone to do that. And don't just trust everyone. Just don't trust John and me on everything. You talk to people and learn, and then you find out what's right for you. And then you can be confident in taking the right steps. And investments can be scary and they come with risk, just like any. But what I've come to just realize too, just knowing people like John and others who work with integrity, it's sometimes even more about the person who's operating these investments, even sometimes more so than the investment itself, because you know that things are going to change, just like we've experienced the last few years. Life will change whether we wanted to or not. And so the question is, you want to be connected to people that can deal with it, are creative, and have the strength to deal with things. And that to me is almost even more important than the numbers. And so that's what I leave with this, that is as you get on your journey, because who you're around really matters and who you're interacting with. And it's important to be around good people. And John, I really appreciate you. And you've always been always a pleasure to deal with. And even when I first met you, chatting through those things, I mean, this guy asks good questions. He really is curious and a lot of fun to be around. And it's a really pleasure to know you and appreciate all the work you do. And for anyone who wants to know and learn more about you, like how best to reach out to you, John.
Yeah, sure. Once again, thank you for having me on. Anybody who hasn't already, please uh, subscribe and like and write a comment for Tom with the Perennial Pride podcast, man. Great show, man. Thank you for having me. But if you want to learn more about what I do, John at Serene, Serene, email me at John at supremeequity.fund. And you can also go to supremeequity.fund. Yeah, I'm trying not to say .com at the end because it's different.
It's
That's
new now. You got to get used to it. You got
Supremeequity.fund.
to retrain your brain a bit, right? As you're rebranding. That's great. No,
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's the fun part of it. It's you're always trying to rediscover yourself and now I got a great team behind me. We love doing what we do. One of my partners on the West Coast and me and another partner here on the East Coast. And we love doing what we're doing. We feel like we're really good at it. We're always educating ourselves, we're always expanding our horizons on what's next. What can we do next as far as multifamily game? And we're not looking to just bring in a bunch of things under the umbrella until we master something. And that's just, I guess that's how life is, right? You master it, then you expand. We're having
that,
fun. So thank you for having me on.
that's great. That's great. Thanks again. And I would highly encourage anyone to schedule some time with John. He is a wealth of information and just like a down to earth guy, and you'll learn quite a bit, and you'll get much out of that conversation. Thank you for being with us here today on the Perennial Pride podcast. It's an honor to be a small part of your journey to financial freedom. If you gained new insight on today's episode, please follow us on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple or Spotify, and follow us on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Also, we always love feedback on helping to improve what we're doing here, so please provide in comments and questions so we can make this podcast even more helpful for you.